Welcome to Predictable Revenue Radio, hosted by Patrick Morrissey, Chief Marketing Officer at Altify, the sales transformation company. At Predictable Revenue Radio, we believe the only way to unlock sustained growth is to deliver predictable revenue by delivering insights, thought leadership, and best practices on how to improve sales velocity. So sit back, all that and more is coming your way as we turn it over to our host, Patrick. Hey, Patrick.
Welcome to Predictable Revenue Radio, where we get into discussions about what moves the needle and what drives revenue. And today I'm pleased to be welcomed by Glenn Davis, the Senior Vice President of Growth Execution and Client Engagement for Optum. Glenn, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about you and tell us a little bit about Optum to set the context for the conversation we're about to have.
Sure. So let me back up a little bit and tell you about UnitedHealth Group. Optum is part of UnitedHealth Group. And UnitedHealth Group is a diversified health and well-being company headquartered in the United States in Minneapolis. We're a leader in worldwide effort to help people live healthier lives and helping the healthcare system work better for everyone. We do that through core capabilities and clinical expertise, advancing technology and data health information, and we uniquely enable ourselves to meet the evolving needs of a changing healthcare environment. Optum, we provide information and technology-enabled health services. Our sister company in UnitedHealth Group is UnitedHealthcare that provides healthcare coverage and benefit services. So that's Optum. I've been there 18 years, and my role for those 18 years has been, I suppose, a little bit diverse, but always growth focused. I ran global sales teams in our pharmaceutical development and pharmaceutical services company for a number of years. And about 10 years ago, I got much more involved in the internal infrastructure and really building the infrastructure on how we go to market, how we enable sales excellence, how we really bring the best of Optum and to a certain extent UnitedHealth Group to our customers and consumers and patients that we all serve in the healthcare world.
Talk to me a little bit about something that seems to be a point of concern for a lot of sales leaders when we talk to them, is that their sales teams aren't skilled enough, or in fact, may not be doing a good job at all. What would you say about the state of sales as a discipline, particularly in B2B today?
I think that there are several factors that have driven maybe a decrement a little bit in terms of our selling ability. And the key factor, I think, is the advent of technology and its impact on how we sell. If I think about my first job, probably a gazillion years ago, working in Skokie, Illinois for a company called the Pattice Group, I was a new salesperson, basically coming right out of college, and I worked for a guy named Jerry Wolf. Well, every Monday morning, I'd sit in Jerry Wolf's office and I'd have a conversation with him about where I was going that week, who I'd be calling on, and we would work through what I needed to accomplish. I didn't know it at the time, but Jerry was teaching me how to sell. And he was instilling in me years of his expertise on kind of how to engage with clients, understand their challenges, and then bring the solutions that we had to bear to help them solve their biggest problems. Mm-hmm. Every Friday, I'd meet with Jerry again, and we'd discuss what did I accomplish that week and what was I planning to do the following week. And I had to have that discussion before my travel would get final approval for the next week. It was a different era. Now, technology has made it so that I don't have to sit right outside Jerry's office anymore. And that's a positive thing because we can get people more geographically located to their customers. People can have a more quality of life in terms of where and when they work. And it allows us to expand the workforce in terms of identifying the best possible resources for our enterprise, specifically as we talk about growth. There's a negative impact too, and I think people miss that sometimes. Because we don't have people sitting right outside our office doors, we're not able to engage as frequently. We're not able to coach and mentor and teach and grow up our salespeople. I think that's had a deleterious or a negative impact on the profession of selling. Years ago, if you were going to be an IBM salesperson, you went through weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of training and education in the product and the challenges you were solving. It went down even to the detail. They taught you how to pack your bag. And now I think what happens, I think we've started to turn the corner on this, and I think it's a good thing. But now in many circumstances, we bring new or newer salespeople into the world with very little training, kind of send them out maybe with a coach or a mentor, somebody trying to help them. It's a challenge, and I think it's a challenge we as an industry, we as a profession have to overcome.
Absolutely. Well, and in the world we all live in, data matters. And you've been doing your own field testing about the art of selling and really trying to have a better understanding of what does good look like. So talk a little bit about what your approach has been to do a little A/B testing, if you will, and what you've discovered.
Yeah, let me talk about two specific things here because I think it's important. I make it a point to meet with 2 potential partners every week. I do that for several reasons. Number one is I think about sales enablement and sales operations and those types of disciplines. I want to stay on top of where the world is going, where the world is heading. Not that I'm looking to willy-nilly kind of add to our stack and the solutions that we provide to our internal consumers of enabling technology and enabling training, but it's because I want to understand where selling is going. I also want to know if there's things out there that can help our salespeople in terms of accomplishing their jobs and doing their mission more effectively. And an observation that I would make is that we have lost kind of the art and the discipline of selling a bit. We're not profoundly good at questioning, as an example. One of the common themes that happens, I'll schedule a half-an-hour meeting with a rep or a VP of one of these companies that I look at and say, well, it looks like it could be interesting. I want to find out about that. And many times their level of preparation leading up to that discussion is, you can tell it's kind of very nascent or very light. I get a lot of kind of questions. I saw something on LinkedIn that you posted very recently. I thought that was interesting. And then they'll dive in and start talking about, well, gee, what's your biggest problem? And I work in healthcare. I think our problems are fairly public in nature. We're also obviously a very large company, Fortune 5. And so we are very public. People could dig in and do a little bit of research and find out about us. Now, I appreciate that that's a challenge. And one of the reasons I know it's a challenge because of the second piece of the research that I think we all have done in the industry and we've done specifically, about 22% of our sellers' times is invested in interacting with clients.
Right.
That means 78% of their time is spent doing something other than investing time with their clients and understanding their clients. And if you think about that from a pure operations or a pure labor arbitrage perspective, we've got what are, generally speaking, some of the higher paid resources in an organization. And they are spending time doing things that are kind of not where we need their time and effort focused. We need their time and effort focused with clients. We need their time and effort focused with understanding industry challenge, client-specific challenges, and how the solutions that any given company has to offer to change and impact positively those challenges. So when I have these conversations, I try and help guide and coach person on the other end and help them get to know us a little bit so that we can have a meaningful conversation. And it's an end of maybe 100 a year, these types of conversations that I have, maybe a little bit less. If my observations are any kind of indication of where the industry is or where our profession is, then there's work to do. And there's very serious work to do around how we're training up salespeople or if we're training up salespeople.
Well, absolutely. And you're hitting on 2 big points that I think anybody in sales leadership, much less sales enablement or sales productivity or relationship excellence or whatever, it's called lots of different things across industries, which is how do I free up my seller's time? And then once the time is freed up, what does good look like? What is a productive meeting? Because what I hear you saying is you're letting people through the filter to get to you to talk about the art of the possible. And when they arrive, they don't know very much, they don't show very much, and they don't bring much value.
Yeah, I think it's broadly true. Certainly there are some circumstances where there were great conversations. So it's not 100% uniformly true, but it's broadly true. It is something we need to investigate. It's something we take very seriously. We're a mission-based company. And so the notion of our sales folks being excellent so that we can get the best of what we have to offer to help change healthcare is extremely important to us.
Well, then you mentioned something when you talked about the evolution of your role and your background that gets into sales excellence. What I'm curious about is break down sales excellence in the real world. What's important when you think about sales excellence and what you're trying to drive and what you see good looks like both in your team and in other teams and other people you work with?
Yeah, that's absolutely going to vary industry to industry and team to team on a certain level. But the key thing here is to start with a curiosity. In other words, knowing and understanding what's it going to take for a given team to excel in terms of their ability to. It starts kind of from a foundation of believing that our solutions or, anyone's solutions are relevant to a marketplace, which ours very much are. But understanding what top performers do and why they do it, and then seeing if that models across your whole team. Now, in some types of transactions, having deep client knowledge and deep client intimacy isn't as critical in larger scale, larger dollar types of transactions.
Well, let me ask you a question. So when you talk about the notion, the evolution of your role being around sales excellence, and talk to me about what that looks like in your organization or with other teams that you work with. Like, what's at the core of sales excellence?
Yeah. So I think that's going to vary a lot depending on the type of organization you have, the type of solutions that you have, what may be very relevant for a transactional salesperson wouldn't be nearly as relevant for somebody who's trying to sell a broader solution with more impact or maybe more dollars, more complexity. I think the key to this whole conversation has to start with understanding what it takes to be successful, modeling, if you will, or following and understanding what your key and top performers do in terms of their day-to-day tasks and activities, their day-to-day preparation, and then creating an environment where everyone, if you think of kind of A, B, and C players in any given sales organization, the key is to move the middle. The C players sometimes aren't going to ever kind of get to be B or A players, but your B players, if you can move half of those up to A players, now you're onto something. And so the key thing is to understand what it takes to be successful in the environment that you find yourself in. We're a very diverse company, so there's lots of answers to that question, even within the four walls of our company. But then I think that this is uniform. Once you've decided what it takes for that person to be successful, then you've got to be really, really ruthless around guarding a person's time in terms of their ability to do those tasks. If I've got 8 to 10 or 12 hours in any given day that a salesperson is working, if they're spending 75% of that time, 9 hours, 10 hours, on internally focused tasks, I don't care what you're selling, quite frankly, you're not going to be successful in any given selling environment. So step one, identify what it takes given your specific business, your specific industry. And step two is, and everybody can do that, and everybody does that. Everybody knows that, okay? What we don't do well, I don't think we do well. It shouldn't be so kind of black and white in this. What I don't think we do well as a profession is jealously guard the time of the people who are out in the field to do those tasks that we've decided are the most important. And that's just critical. And because it's hard, because the CFO wants some bit of information and the CIO wants a different bit of information. Your head of product and your head of marketing, they all want kind of different pieces of the information that our salespeople are gathering. And so there's a very key labor arbitrage question, because what your CFO wants, what your CIO wants, what your product people, your marketing people want, it's important information to drive the company. Is the salesperson really the best person to be doing lots and lots of data entry for you into your CRM system? Or would that be better accomplished through a different person?
Right.
Key questions.
And everybody's got a little bit different point of view on that, but it all comes back to the data. And it all comes back to trying to give everybody in the team an understanding of where are we at with the customer, whether that's in context of an opportunity or maybe more broadly around an account plan. When you're thinking about evaluating opportunities and account plans, what are you really looking for?
This notion of client intimacy is just, I think, really, really critical. And there's really some simple ways to kind of, if you pay attention to what people say in the context of a client plan review or a test and improve session where you're reviewing a deal and trying to improve that deal, there's language hints that people give us to see if they're really intimate with a client. Many times I'll ask questions over the course of my career, what are the key decision points that a client's going to make? And you'll have a sales maker or someone say, well, I think it's X, Y, and Z. And that the minute the word think kind of comes out of their mouth, my immediate reaction is to say, I wonder if there's really a level of client intimacy that is going to help us as an enterprise really solve that client's challenges. Because I think it's important to know what a salesperson thinks. I think it's even more important to know what the client believes. And to drive that level of client intimacy, whether it's through a client planning session or client planning discipline or an opportunity pursuit, that level of intimacy is critical. And if you don't get to that, it's very, very difficult to get past that point. Other things we're always looking for in past client intimacy are how well do we know the organization?
Sure.
Do we know who's influencing others in the organization? Do we know how each person in a deal team stacks and prioritizes their decision criteria? Because it's going to be different, again, for a CIO or a CFO. They're going to prioritize things very, very differently in a decision making. So that intimacy helps us understand how do given stakeholders prioritize? What is their decision making process? And I think this is so interesting because this was all the rage several years ago. What's the client's decision-making process? And it's important to understand that. But I think a lot of times clients don't have decision-making processes. And I think what they're really looking for is someone to help them guide them along the way and get to the right answer. Nobody wants to sell a client or renew for a client something that isn't going to solve their problem. But what's going to help that client get to the right answer so that everybody wins? My boss likes to say, I can sell anybody something once, but I really have to know what I'm doing to sell them something a second time. And what he means by that is I've got to have a situation where I'm going into a client and I'm giving them something that I absolutely positively I believe that it's going to solve for their challenges and solve for their problems. It's a level of dedication to customer success, quite frankly, that you don't find often. Past client intimacy, another thing that I talk about a lot is this concept of deal fluency.
Right.
And that's as important. You can't get to deal fluency unless you have some level of client intimacy. What are the dynamics in that deal?
Yeah, well, what does that mean in real life? Because you talk to anybody who's sold for more than 20 minutes and you give them an open-ended question like, you feel like you're pretty competent in deal fluency. And they translate that as, well, yeah, I know how to sell. I get deals done. But I don't think that's what you're talking about here.
No, I'm really not. Sometimes if, we want to know if somebody's a coach in a given deal. And one of the test questions for that is, could I call them up and have them take my call? Or could I call them up and get a meeting with them? And that way I know that they're really invested in getting to the right solution. So that's kind of how we define a coach. And there are lots of test questions that we can ask kind of folks along the way. What is their decision criteria? Who have you confirmed that with? When can we expect to kind of have a decision made? Who are the key influencers of what looks like to be the buying persona in any given opportunity? Are they negative or positive influencers? So there's a series of questions that you can ask to determine if there's deal fluency. I think one of the things I look for in your top salespeople, I can give them a whiteboard and say, okay, draw out the political map for this given opportunity. Not the customer per se, but the given opportunity. They can go up to the whiteboard and they can draw out the political map, who influences whom, what the relationships are. They've got a real sense of what the dynamics of that deal are. The next piece is, and I'll use kind of a specific language here, can you tell me what's in the insight map? What is the goals, initiatives, pressures, obstacles that's driving that client decision? Many times in these transactions that I have with some external sales folks, they never really get to those types of that type of insight with me. They never really ask those kinds of questions. I have to offer them up. And so that's when I'm talking about deal fluency, it's really those things. What's that political map going to look like? What's that insight map going to look like? Where is that deal as it stands today and tomorrow?
Well, and it sounds like based on what you were talking about earlier with regard to intimacy, there's also a tell here what language is being used in the team, and does it sound like the client?
Does it look like and sound like the client? So, this is an interesting dynamic. Over the course of years, I have noted nobody really wants to lie to you. Nobody in a deal review, especially if you're coming from a place of wanting to support a client team or a salesperson, nobody wants to lie to you. And so they'll shape language. If they don't know an answer, a lot of times they'll shape language. When oftentimes the right answer is, I don't know yet.
Right.
But they'll shape language and they'll use that think word, well, I think, because they don't want to lie to you. They don't want to be deceptive. People aren't naturally deceptive. Most folks aren't anyway. So they'll shape that language in a way that gives you that verbal hint. And it's more than just words. Sometimes it's a tentative approach to something. Mm-hmm. They'll talk around things. And then, I think the approach to that has to be, I think in the old days, that was kind of, somebody get queued up. Beatings will continue until performance improves.
Sure.
And I think where we've come to, and hopefully we've come to and evolved to in our profession at this point, is that's a cue for me to take that salesperson or manager aside and say, hey, what can we do to support this person and getting greater intimacy and fluency in terms of the client and that opportunity? Well,
and when you do that, then you really get to what I've heard you refer to as professional selling.
Yeah.
Right. And there's an investment, but on both sides of the equation, that as a seller, I've got to have belief that my manager, my team are investing in me. They're giving me tools, technology, information, insight, all the other things that are going to help me be world class.
Yeah.
How do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. A friend of mine talks about athletes and environment. And you got to have the right athletes. Not everybody is cut out to be a salesperson. And there are lots of different types of personality types that can be salespeople, but not everybody wants to be or can be a salesperson. The other thing is environment. And have you created a professional environment where expectations are clear, where discipline is clear, where metrics leading and lagging are clear, where compensation is clear, and then we've enabled those people to not only have the right tools to get their job done, but have the sufficient time and training to accomplish the tasks that we've decided will help them get their job done. I think the other thing is this notion of coaching and mentoring, which has gotten a lot of playback in our circles over the last several years. But if you're going to have a professional sales force and a professional selling environment, you've got to have folks that are professional managers and leaders who really know how to coach a person along. It's not that long ago. I can't remember exactly the environment I was in. I may have been out on the road having dinner in a hotel or something like this, but I ended up talking to the chap next to me who was a sales manager and just a couple guys on the road talking about selling.
Sure.
And I asked him, what is one-on-ones like, the salespeople? He mentioned to me that it was a lot of kind of how are things going, where are their challenges? And I said, well, do you ever talk about deals? He said, well, not unless they bring it up. And I thought to myself, wow, that is not an evolution. That is a devolution of progress in terms of selling. So you must have professional managers who are willing to kind of ask questions. And again, coming from the place of let's make this better. Intent counts more than technique. Coming from a place of let's make this better, where you've got managers who will have those conversations. How's this deal going? And knowing if they're kind of getting sold a little bit of a bill of goods, and then reshaping that salesperson's perspective on that deal and helping them advance that deal.
Well, and you touched on something that I think is probably a good place to wrap this conversation. When you think about your career and what's made you successful in selling, who's the best person you've ever worked with or worked for? And what's the key takeaway you give that you helped internalize to drive your sales success?
Yeah, I'm actually going to give you two, because I think we all have kind of evolved in different ways, and the road is not straight. I mentioned Jerry Wolf a bit ago. At the very foundation and early part of my career, he instilled me the discipline required, and kind of the daily disciplines and weekly disciplines and monthly disciplines and annual disciplines around how to be a professional salesperson in terms of planning and focus, that you can't sell everything to everyone. You need to focus on where you can really do the most good, and the discipline around planning. And kept up with Jerry up until just a few years ago, but a phenomenal sales professional. And then Eric Murphy, who is just an absolute pro's pro. And he brings an energy and a passion to the profession of selling, and great insights and great care and concern around the people that work with and for him in terms of their development and their health. Those two guys specifically, in terms of my professional development, have just been incredible influences on me.
Fantastic. Well, Glenn, I really appreciate you sharing your expertise. You touched on a number of things, from professionalism and selling to deal fluency and intimacy, that we could have a long conversation, but I've got to let you get back in front of customers. So thanks so much for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Predictable Revenue Radio with your host, Patrick Morrissey, Chief Marketing Officer at Altify, the sales transformation company. One of the many shows here on the ever-growing Funnel Radio channel for at-work listeners like you.